Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. So, welcome to the show, Lynne, and I'm just gonna jump right into this. I'm not even gonna ask you about the story around your discoveries around empathy or anything like that, because I think by now, with the state of world affairs, we know empathy is important, and that we know being compassionate for other human beings is important. Um, and that's where we need to go is what is if we were to be more compassionate, what do you think would happen to our world today?
So that really is the question in the question today, because you see this divisiveness and lack of concern for others. So for your listeners, I just want to start with my teeny foundation, my little pyramid, so people will understand the framework and foundation, and it will answer your question. Mm-hmm. So I usually start with empathy for others. We need to be empathetic for others, but stop. We have to back up. And this is what I hear, you have to be a listener and an active listener to people. We have to take one step back to the ultimate pyramid, to the ultimate foundation of foundations, and that is empathy for yourself. It's also called self-compassion. Because of COVID and before COVID, people are hurting, people are broken, stress, trauma, abuse is up, especially now because of COVID. So job one is really taking care of yourself. And that can be yoga, that can be doing art, that can be coloring books, and we could talk for an hour just for that. But I want people to understand before they can be empathetic for others, they need to take care of themselves. They're not perfect. Nobody's perfect, stuff like that. So later on we can drill down deeper on that, but let's start with self-compassion, empathy for oneself. Mm-hmm. Upon that, you can build to empathy for others, where we care about others, not just our family, not just the people in our church, not just our community, but for others, for Ukrainians who are in eastern Ukraine, or maybe I think Darfur is now a mess, Syria, all millions of displaced people from Syria, that we can care about others. And then finally, empathy for others, not enough. We have to take action. There are many things we can do for others. Not everyone has all the money in the world. A small donation. Role model that for your kids. Go to a local food shelter, donate food, so on and so forth. So 1, 2, 3, empathy for yourself, right? Self-compassion, empathy for others. But empathy for others is no good unless you take action.
Right. Right. So
did I answer your question?
Yeah, you really answered my question. And so, how do we start with empathy for ourselves?
So that is a very good question. So empathy for oneself, there's many kinds of opportunities, options, techniques that you need to do self-care. I think that I'd like to refer people to Kristen Neff, who is a professor at Stanford, and she specializes in this, and she has workbooks for people. I mean, she really is the guru and the expert. But through my process of self-discovery, as you know, I am director of the Kidsbridge Youth Center in New Jersey, and we have educated more than 30,000 children, students. And so the way I learned about empathy and thinking that empathy is number one, the most important social-emotional skill, active listening, just listening to thousands of educators, thousands of parents, and thousands of kids, you learn what is broken and what needs to be fixed. So self-compassion, self-empathy. One of the things we do in the youth center is to have kids do reflections. So, maybe I was bullied, or I was not feeling good about myself, or I was excluded. That I think the strongest thing that we do at the center, and that for your listeners can hear, is that you are not the only one, right? So self-compassion starts with understanding millions of kids are bullied. You're not the only one. Millions of kids are called names, because there's always, right, a little boy or little girl inside of us. And to learn that you are not alone. Because I think we, especially today, COVID being isolated, that we think we're the only one who's suffering this, left out, bullied, or such. So the commonality to know that millions of others are having your experience, and nobody is perfect, right? So I think that's where you start with perhaps a journal, perhaps a coloring book, perhaps reading. Reading is one of the most powerful ways that you can create empathy for yourself or others. So, on the face of it, what's easy to do is literature for your children, right? At night or during a meal, you read a book to them, and reading encourages empathy, right?
Right.
Reading a book about other characters where you're, what we say, walking in the shoes of others. So reading is a great way, self-empathy, reading to your kids. And here's the point that is not often discussed. Reading is not enough without action. What is the action with reading? I'll give you an example. You read a book to your child before they go to bed, 25 minutes. Usually we shut the book. No. Then we start a short discussion. How is that character feeling? What did Louise do? What did Michael do? What would you do in that situation? How was Michael feeling? How was Taquan feeling, right? Ask these prompt questions to make the characters and the incidents come alive. So this way we're walking in the shoes of others, which is really the foundation of empathy, which then creates self-empathy and self-compassion. So books, coloring books, classes. If you're isolated, reach out to other people. You don't want people who are isolated and alone. Forgiving yourself for not being perfect. I wish I learned that younger. I'm an adult now. Of course, in my book, there's a lot of other self-compassion tips. But the thing is, people will go online and they'll read and how to do it, and then they don't do it. So let me suggest to your listeners, 10 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day, devote it to yourself, to give yourself a breath. And I have another kind of fun tip that I invented. So I am an owl person. I am crazy about owls. So I've got all these little owl pictures and photos and tchotchkes. So I have a little place set up on my desk. And so this is my little, I don't know what the word for it is. It's just a little center for myself, to calm myself, to take a breath. So I would suggest that people would create, put it in a box, or your favorite things of smell good or your favorite colors. And this is your self-compassion, calming down box. Included in that, let me talk about breathing, right? So our mind takes over, our reptilian brain, we're out of control. Breathing and slowed breathing to calm oneself down, because we're all mind. Sometimes we sort of lose control of our mind. Okay, breathing, take stock of your body from your toes to your head. And again, other people, can do this better than me, but look into that. How to calm yourself down physically with breathing will calm down your mind as well. Is that helpful?
Yeah. You are reminding me of something that other experts that I've talked to have said, and they said that that you're going on about breathing, and they said for the most part, most people don't deep breathe enough. They only shallow breathe.
Amen. Yeah.
And the idea of when you take a really deep breath and let it in and out a few times, that the blood becomes more oxygenated, and you get more oxygen to your brain and your muscles and in the rest of your body, and anxiety drops. Like the cortisol levels and all
Absolutely,
that,
yes.
all those
On
anxiety
point.
hormones go down.
Yep, yep. I am seeing. So my staff teaches. We start with preschoolers, right? We do preschool to 8th grade, and we teach preschoolers deep breathing. And to your point, I am reading a lot more research how beneficial it is to you physically, right? Endorphins, oxygen, that it really is beneficial to your body.
Yeah.
So if some people won't do it for themselves, like do it for your body, right? And for your health. And I mean, it's for physical and mental health, right? So here, empathy, self-compassion. Okay, I'm going to take care of myself this week. I'm going to just 20 minutes this week I'm going to devote to taking care of myself. And then you should step it up. But, you know, for people who have trouble with entitlement, do that. And then, of course, role model this for your children. Can you think that, like, all the things we're talking about now, adults are listening, if they could teach all this stuff to their kids earlier, what a better world we would have.
Yeah. Okay. So, you also said something else about reading to our children and things like that. I don't know if this wasn't an actual case study, but it was something that I witnessed. That do you remember years ago? I guess it was almost 20 years ago or so. The tsunami in Indonesia.
Yeah, yes. And when tourists were climbing trees. It was horrible.
Right.
People drowned. Yes, horrible,
yes.
horrible,
horrible thing, right? And of course the country was in a disarray because of the disaster that it actually caused, and people were starving afterwards.
Right.
Well, there was a kindergarten class that I witnessed because the preschool system that this was, they read to kids. They read from stories from around the world and everything, right? That this particular kindergarten class got so involved that what is going on with these people over here? What do you mean they don't have enough food? What do you mean they don't have enough water? We have so much that these kids, they raised as 5-year-olds. They were cognizant enough to raise between $4,000 and $5,000 to send to Indonesia.
What a beautiful thing.
Yeah. So, and the reason why I'm telling is, I'm going to refer to my audience for a second. The reason why I'm telling this story is because what Lynne is talking about works. We can teach our kids this. You know?
We have to teach our kids this. I mean, if you and I, you know, hopefully we'll end this, like, making the world a better place.
Mm-hmm.
I find that, you know, we're educating thousands of students in New Jersey each year, that today, you know, depression is up, anxiety and stress is up. But if we could start with preschoolers, the kindergarten class you're referencing, and teach them self-empathy and teach them empathy for others, and then the action, I mean, this is all done. And then they have the agency. They have the sensitivity and empathy for others and the agency to feel that they can make a difference. Because a lot of kids today, like, they feel they can't make a difference. You know, high school, college. I just was with some of my son's friends recently, and like I was saying, you have to vote. And they're like, oh, it doesn't make a difference. So I'm seeing, you know, discouraged young people that to your point, this kindergarten class, these children are going to grow up to be amazing because they feel they have agency and they're empowered. That's a great example.
Okay, so you're in New Jersey, of course, that's the United States, and all the world is watching women's rights happening in the United States because, you know, it's like, oh, the United States was so critical of places like Afghanistan and things like that, right?
Right.
Now, granted, the United States will probably never come over the law to say that women have to wear a burqa, but that's not the point. The point is that when you're talking about making a difference, when the President of the United States, Joe Biden, he, in a press conference, said, women, go out and vote. We can change what the courts is doing to our rights if we
Right.
go and vote. He's saying that it can make a difference. Then maybe there is a point to that, right?
There's absolutely a point, because I think people feel, my vote doesn't count, or maybe they feel they can't trust the voting system, but I think that was all verified recently. But one person can make a difference. And so, because I invested in starting with youth and starting youth early, I think that it remains to be taught to kids, that they see this kindergarten class you referenced, or they see kids making a difference. Let me provide you an example. So we have a center, and one of the exhibits in the center was like, I'm going to create this room of heroes. So we created this room of heroes, and they were all adult heroes from all over the world, but adult heroes. And I had kids going in and out of this, second grade to sixth grade, and some middle schoolers. And then, we were testing it, and it wasn't testing well, evaluating and assessment. And we realized that, no, these are kids. They're not going to be inspired by adult heroes, because adults have the capacity. So we completely took the room apart and rebuilt it again, and looked for and put up posters and information about kids making a difference, right? Like Hallie, from Denmark, the environmentalist. I'm blanking. What's her last name? Greta Thunberg. Right. Like women or young girls like her, young kids 7, 8, 9, and they are there, and your listeners can, I think Giraffe Heroes is one website, and there are other, that you find these kids making a difference and sharing them with your family, like dinner table, lunch table, in the car, to share what kids are doing. So again, kids get this empathy for others and empathic action to do something. Well, let me just back up into the problem, because I want your listeners to take this very seriously. And this is not just my opinion. Here are the problems. I mean, to me, this is on fire, right? So I want listeners to know that empathy today is measured to be declining. And I don't think that should surprise anybody. Children's face-to-face skills are diminished. Children are spending so much time on the media, their ability to articulate and understand the difference between feelings and being children who can communicate diminished. Interpersonal skills are suffering. Bullying and cyberbullying are rising, and we are, and I'm sure you've heard this, we're a bystander society, right? So I want to start with, this is serious. We need to increase empathy. These are the problems. So your question again, Michael, was?
Yeah. With all those things being on the rise, how can we curb that just as a person then?
Okay. So I would say to you, one person can make a difference. So you're going to start with yourself, and then you're going to start with your family. Your parents, your grandparents, your children, people in your circle. Start with them. So you can have discussions about empathy and what's going on, and without, fires in California, and I don't know if you guys have fires up there in Canada, but that we start, number one, listening to each other. We call it active listening in education. You put down your phone, your body turns toward the person, you could be to the side of the person, you don't have to face them directly, and that you're actually really listening and processing for each other. There's so many lonely people out there who don't hear each other. Right. Upon that, you can have less media for yourself and in your house. I just had a conversation with my daughter, and this is in the research. More depression, more anxiety, have to stay in touch with things. So less media. And here's the other scary thing about media. Kids have two identities now. They have their identity online, and they have their identity face to face with people. And so they're struggling, like, what is the contradiction? What is the difference with those two identities? And keeping this online identity up and positive and so many friends and I'm beautiful, right? This and that. The pressure for young girls for sexting, and boys too, maybe, I don't know, is just worse than it was before. So active listening, get control of the media. I would say to schedule more active listening and face-to-face time, in your own home and with your friends would be a very good idea. So those are two really good strategies. Doing things for others, I mean, I give back to others, and I get such a warm, fuzzy feeling. If you're not, doing things, a food shelter, you can go and walk dogs and cats, at a local animal shelter. Make a contribution. Go online with your child or a friend. See what resonates with you. Maybe it's the ocean. Maybe it's the environment. Maybe it's the fires in California. People are displaced. Maybe it's Syria. Maybe it's Iraq. And, of course, Ukraine. Oh, my goodness. So even if your child can make a $10 donation or you yourself can make a $25 donation, you're doing something, and that's powerful. It builds empathy. It helps others, other communities outside of what you see. And, of course, how about some empathy for our planet? Our planet needs some help.
Yeah. So now that you brought up empathy for our planet, can we view even our planet as being as a living entity?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So that's one of the chapters in my book is empathy for the planet. It's a living organism. It's composed of us and the flora and the fauna. I just saw yesterday a photo of a whale with a fishing net trailing from its mouth the length of its body, right? So we can do, I think it was a right whale, and a little baby beside it, right? So there are organizations that scout around and remove plastic from mammals and remove plastic from the ocean. So, that's the ocean, marine animals. Plastic, you can, with your child, get a plastic bag, walk along the seashore. When I was little, there was no plastic along the water. Your lake, your river, go with your child and pick up a bag of plastic. I mean, these role modeling these things where you can make a difference. And let me drill down for this. For every piece of plastic you pick up, river, ocean, sea, lake, you're saving perhaps a turtle or a fish. You know what I mean? I mean, it really is. It does make a difference. It makes a difference in that turtle's life. So here you are, role modeling for yourself for the earth. Can you stop pollution? No. But, when you're out camping, you can be really careful that fire is out, right? Accidental fires. And you can role model for your kid that, or your friends, go out with your friends, or have a coffee clutch with some friends and say, okay, let's do something for the ocean this month. What can we do? Let's do something for pollution, or I don't know. There's just so many things, in terms of the Yellowstone Park, I think, just had a big flood. That there are things that people can do. And I'll tell you what I'm really encouraged by. I have been to the library lately. There's a lot of great social justice and environmental justice books in the library. So if you want to get some books out of the library, wonderful pictures, and encourage your kid or yourself, there is something that you can do to help the planet and our Earth.
Now, see, you're going back to reading again, which is something else that I know that I know the libraries here in Canada, or at least specifically in British Columbia, they're kind of devoid of people. It's like everybody thinks that I have to Google it. The only way to research now is by using Google, and it's like the library is they may not be on Google yet, right?
Well, I think it's a different experience. I think, one of my favorite things is going to, when I was little, going to the library in the summer. They had a rocket club, and every book you read, you went higher and higher. There's a different dynamic in the library you're not going to get online. Can you sit by your child or friend and Google something and sit side by side, watching a laptop? Yes. But the library is like a reverential place. And I think you would value books more. It's a quiet place where you can go with, your significant other or a child and let your child discover the joy of books. I mean, they smell good, they're bright and colorful, and then you can get, some books on the planet or whatever you're interested in. But it's just a quiet, meditative place, and I think it's a great place to conduct self-compassion for yourself and for others, and to create empathy and feel that you can make a difference. And then the reference librarians are there to help you, and I think they knew more than Google will ever know, right? So, yes, I'd like to encourage your listeners, please go to libraries and support them. There's so many librarians all over the country, and they are studied up in library science. So these are very special people who can help you in your journey and guide you. It's more than Google. And please, as you know, I mean, the advertisers, the people who spend the most money are coming up at the top. So you really have a biased, prejudiced view of what you're looking for. In a library, it's sort of like, the card catalog, which is now online. So I would encourage your visitors to at least once a month go to a library. What a wonderful experience it is.
Yeah, I personally I love the library as a resource.
Me too.
Yeah, I've made some amazing discoveries on all sorts of topics by going to the library.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I am gonna say this for some of the more techie people out there to think that if it's not online, then it doesn't. Then it probably doesn't exist. The library has databases that far exceed the capabilities of Google.
Yeah, you just got me thinking about another benefit of libraries. So, on Google, attention spans are growing much shorter for both adults and kids, right? We get this immediate gratification on a cell phone. Mm-hmm. So what I find also for my own kids, I hope they're not listening, is this short attention span where they're not learning in depth about a topic. So Google, okay, you read 3 paragraphs, you're done. That's not being informed. If you go to the library, and not that you have to read 300 pages, but you're going to, let's just stick with the oceans. You get a book out on the oceans, and it's 30 pages of color, and you review that with somebody, you're going to learn a lot more. Some people are visual learners, right? So through the pictures. Some people, maybe an audio book you're going to get out of the library. So I'm just not really, in an emergency, yes, go onto the computer. But in terms of learning, in terms of emotional learning, back to the libraries to really learn different topics and issues in depth. And this is what we should be teaching our children.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go back to something else that you said about especially the millennial generation and phones. My one grandniece, she's my niece's daughter, who is now in university and everything, and which was really cool. I'm glad she's in university. But trying to get a hold of her, you send her. I called her, and it's like, she doesn't answer. She doesn't answer the phone. The only way you can get a hold of her, the only way to reach her, is to text message her.
Right.
And,
right.
I've asked other people in the family. Is like, oh yeah, well that's the trend now. The only way you get a hold of the kids is, well, what happened to the art of conversation?
Right. So that's really a scary thing to talk about, because what I mentioned before, the face-to-face interpersonal time, and I do want to eventually migrate to talk about what's going on in the workplace, because I know, your podcast is business oriented, but this is having an effect on, our kids as they enter the workplace with employers. But, this is texting is quick, it's immediate. The kids become addicted, I think, to the text. But this is something that I observed, with my own children. So what I would say is, if you want to have a conversation, you could schedule a phone time with your grandniece, or when she's home for the holidays, you're taking her out to lunch, and she's going to spend an hour with you of devoted time where you really get to know each other. You can bribe her with a lunch or a dinner, but I don't see these kids wanting to have a conversation on the phone. They're moving so fast they don't see things. Again, back to my daughter, we went to an art museum, and it's like, okay, let's look at this painting. Well, she left the room. She was already in the second room, right? So our society has positioned our kids to almost not be in the present, Michael, which is kind of frightening. So got to slow these kids down, take them out to lunch, slow them down so that they can go to an art museum. Here's another great thing for empathy, right? Stand in front of a painting and, my daughter's ready to run in the next room. No, let's look at this. What do you see? What are the colors? What are the characters feeling? Why did this artist paint it? Why oil? Why this or that? With prompts that you get a conversation going, because some of these kids don't know how to have a conversation, and that's kind of frightening. But let's not lose hope. Let's be positive. Let's slow it down. Let's us be more strategic with our grandchildren and our children. Slow it down and role model the art of conversation.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That does actually make a lot of sense. And there's a lot we can actually do to, I especially like the idea of bribing her with a lunch or dinner.
Right.
Yeah. It's like,
Yeah, but I hear you. You're yearning for some quality time with your grandniece. Okay. How are you going to do it? She's not going to talk to you during college. No. College is intense and this is her priority. But to conceive of a way, okay, I want to do, she loves horses, or he loves croquet, or, find something that you have in common and do it together.
Right. That of course, that is something else that I'm working on with her, is she's studying art and film. So,
nice.
So it's like, hey, I love movies, and of course we edit movies here too. So, so she's learning that sort of stuff, and I want
right,
want
and
her
you
to
love that stuff, right?
Yeah, so I want her to
you
come
love
work
that stuff.
with
So
me,
there's a wonderful thing in common.
Yeah. Yeah, so maybe we can also work together.
Go to a movie together.
Yeah, and
right,
spend
but you
some time.
have to talk. You have to talk.
Yeah.
It's got to be like a meal or a sandwich in the park and discuss the movie. You know what I mean? You're bonding and building and role modeling attention and empathy and care and concern.
Yeah. So you said about slowing down. So when we slow down, are we more able to feel the energy of the people around us?
So that's a really good question. And so I know from the research I've done, and I've got hundreds of points of research because I wanted to know what the scientific community had to say about this. So empathy is a slow process. So we know in the world that we're so busy and everything's so quick, but empathy is a slow process. It's like a pondering process. Mm-hmm. So back to the books, how is that character feeling? There's not an answer right away. How is, I'm trying to think of a childhood, Hansel and Gretel is coming to mind, okay? There's a witch coming, right? How are they feeling? So there's no right or wrong answer. So when you slow it down to discuss, face to face, with this active listening, your child is pondering, like, I never thought about it. How are the characters in this movie or this book? Let me shift to movies and TV, because our kids are watching a lot of TV and movies unattended. My son wanted to watch South Park, which for middle school I thought was very awful, and turning it off doesn't help. Again, if those upsetting movies and TV, to discuss it with them. Yeah. So slowing it down is like, you can pause the movie, right? Yeah. You can pause the movie or the documentary, stop and discuss, because we're throwing too much at our kids. And so if we could stop it or slow it down and then discuss, and then empathy is not something, okay, we had this 5-minute conversation, you're now inculcated with more empathy. It doesn't work that way. It's a slow, gradual process, as I think self-compassion would be too, right? It's a process upon your slowly building, and empathy for others. Again, this is a slow process. Nothing wrong with that. We used to be probably much slower with radio and TV, but with the computers and the cell phones, it's moving too fast. Slow it down would be my advice.
Well, I'm gonna throw a curveball at what we remember TV and radio being, because there was the on and off switch, and that was the end of it, right? Or unplug the thing from the wall, and if mom and dad unplugged it from the wall, you weren't watching the damn thing at all. Period. It was done.
Right, and then my TV got turned off a lot, because you would just sit there and watch show after show after show. But it was time to do chores or go to bed. So here's another point for empathy and just child rearing. The parents need to be in charge of their house. And I grew up in a neighborhood, in a community where I saw in some houses the children were in charge of the house. I mean, really, it's frightening.
Well, so as the parent, you have to be in charge, right?
The parents have to be in charge, and some parents, I think, maybe they didn't have good parents or no wherewithal, that there are parenting books out there for them. Of course, my book is going to teach them the importance of empathy and to build upon that. But other parenting books as well, that parents, please, be in charge of your house. It is good for children to learn limits. It is definitely good for children to have less media, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if parents can control the media, control the respect and kindness in their house with family meetings and house rules of kindness that the family can create together, that everybody respects each other, get control. If you've lost it, get control of your house. Like in classrooms, we call them caring classrooms. The teacher is in charge and creates a culture of a caring classroom. I urge your listeners, if you don't have it, create a caring, respectful home. You can do it. Never too late to start.
Yeah. Oh, I know here. Well, we don't have any kids left in our house, but when you talk about less media, I'm inundated with media all day long, and because hey, that's kind of what we do, right? That when I close the door to the studio, I don't want to turn on the news. So
yeah.
Yes,
it's very tough.
Yeah. And what I find is that out of all generations, the younger generations, they find their way to Netflix and YouTube and all that kind of stuff, but they all have to make sure that they turn on some kind of screen. When I close the door to the studio, and I'm done for the day with work, I don't want the screen on anymore, and we don't have cable. We have internet, but we don't have cable because then you can turn the screen back on again, and there it all is all over again. It's like, how important is it to disconnect ourselves from all that?
Oh my goodness! For empathy, like definitely the disconnection. I didn't realize as, the internet was taking over my house, but I would do things much differently now. I mean, I'm an empty nester, but it was sort of like creeping into my home. So I think they have some like disconnect days, once in a while that you can disconnect. I have said to you, I mean, some media is good, but, some is that you should just really disconnect from it. But I would say reduce. But I think, again, this all folds together neatly. Less media, slow it down, more face-to-face time for your family, more interpersonal skills, and it really is all tied up in a bow that I really think it benefits your children. You know what I mean? I mean, they feel like they have to keep up with the others. Jaron Lanier is sort of a digital guru, and I encourage this book for your listeners. He wrote a book, 10 Arguments for Deleting Your Social Media Accounts Right Now. And he says, and I quote, "If you're not part of the solution, there will be no solution."
Ooh.
So he's really an internet guru. But what he's saying specifically, and we've talked about the internet, but we really should drill down into social media, the pressure for our kids. So when you turn it off, number one to turn off is social media. Again, the two identities I talked about, but the pressure these kids have, to establish this other identity and to be included, or what if you're excluded? And so, when we were bullied, Michael, and I'm thinking, you're closer in age to me than others, the bullying would stop at 3 p.m. and you're done, right, for the next day.
You had a safe haven.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's
exactly.
like I could go home and the door locked and you're on the other side and you can't get to me. Right?
Right. So now cyberbullying is 24/7. You never, no safety, no closing the door.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to share, your listeners should know, that children are killing themselves. There's a word for it now. It's called bullycide. So if a child at 3 p.m. leaves the school and has to be bullied all night, and no one is what we call an upstander, a child who stands up and speaks out on your behalf, and then you come in the next day and you're like, you're gay, or you're not invited to the party, or you're, whatever people make up, and like hundreds of kids have seen this post, you feel like your life is over and there's no hope. This is a very serious issue. So we really need to have empathy, to instill the empathy, discuss social media with your children, urge them not to repost mean, cruel things. I mean, you could be saving a child's life. This is very important. And I find that, the schools are attempting to ramp up to educate the kids, but parents need to be involved too. They need to know what their kids are doing. And you know what? No computers and no cell phones in the room after, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. It has to be developmentally appropriate. But when you're doing your own thing, and sometimes parents are on their phones, but again, limiting, turning it off, being in control of your house, that they need to really spend time reducing, managing social media.
Yeah, one of the things that I have noticed now, when my kids were younger, I'd simply as this, I would turn off the Wi-Fi.
Okay,
well,
that's good.
That doesn't really necessarily work anymore, because the like your iPhone is like
True.
It's like they're still connected. It's like the cell data connects to
those cell phones.
Yeah.
You can collect the cell phones and have rules in your house, and you can create those rules with your kids, and then you'll have a compromise, right? Mm-hmm. So no cell phones during meal times, no cell phones like maybe at a family picnic. I mean, oh my God, going to the movies or the theater, I see people on their phones and like you're in a theater, like it's so, rude and such. Or if you're I don't know. There's so many things we can do, but but do, give yourself permission to take control of the phones and make some rules together as a family. Again, less media, more face-to-face family time.
Yeah. So, because we're starting to run out of time, and I want to get
how much more time do we have? Because I did want to just sort of lean into, because I know you have entrepreneurs and business people, how empathy plays well into successful employment and successful candidates in employment.
Okay, well, I was going to ask another question, but why don't we end on that topic?
Okay, well, I don't want to cut you off from your question.
No. That's it. It's my question was going to be about how do we create a better world, but that's a strong part of it. Our work life is we spend how many hours a day at work, right? And how many hours a week at work. So yeah,
right. And I said when we talked about the Earth and the planet, and I think I'm hoping people have a sense just to like do one small thing and do it soon and role model it to your kids. But I did want to share with your listeners how important empathy is to the workplace. Empathy, having the quality of empathy and empathy for others makes for a better leader, makes for a better employee as a team player, and empathy is respected by your peers. From the research I've seen, empathy as a quotient, as a skill, outweighs cognitive skills, which really blows my mind. And I have to look for the source to tell you. It's I'll look at my notes here and see who said that. But empathy, I'll say it again, it bears repeating, empathy outweighs cognitive skills. It creates a culture. We talked about caring classroom, caring homes. How about a caring workplace? Empathy quotient higher makes you a better interviewer, a better interviewee. It's a foundation for relationships. So if I haven't sold you on the quality of empathy, think about how valuable it is for your kids or your employees to function, to listen, and to contribute in the workplace.
Right. Well, in another conversation that I was speaking to somebody about how important it is for the company to work as a team.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. It makes for better team playing skills because you're listening and then contributing, and then it sort of equalizes, I think, the playing field, right?
Mm-hmm.
By the way, the person I just found it, the person who talked about researchers, Daniel Goleman, who's written a lot of books on corporations and leadership, in his book Primal Leadership, empathy outweighs cognitive skills, and that leaders who use empathy create the most energizing, top-performing cultures.
Wow.
That blows me away. Yeah, check out Primal Leadership. And in this guy studies corporations, so he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah. So empathy, it plays a huge role in everything that we do day to day.
I would say, yeah. I think it's the most important social-emotional skill, and it's really something, implicit. Let me make one more point. I found through the research. So a lot of people think that we're born with the empathy that we're born with, and you can't increase it, and that's not true. You can increase by role modeling it and teaching it, and I've done this in the youth center in Kidsbridge. I do a pre and post on the kids that come in. We do empathetic activities, interactive, face-to-face, and from when they come to when they leave, I have measured increases in empathy in just 4 hours.
So at this point, I'm going to really encourage everybody that they really need to go get the Empathy Advantage, your book.
Thank you.
Yeah,
because I talk about how I've measured it and how helpful
and how you've measured
but
the
you
increase.
Can make a difference. Is my point.
Yeah. I think your book is important to today's society in the fact that you not only do you make the point, but you prove the point that empathy can be taught, and empathy can be strengthened by way of exercise, the same as we do the rest of our health of our bodies.
Right, right.
So it was.
Thank you for reading my book, and thank you for getting that. I mean, that really is the most hopeful thing for parents.
Yeah.
Or in relationships. You're in a relationship and you'd like your, husband, wife, mother, father, whoever, to have more empathy. You can use these same activities and exercises.
Right. Awesome. So, we can also find you at Kidsbridge is also online, isn't it? You have a website for that?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, Kidsbridge Center. I mean, we do remote programs, for classrooms and youth groups, but kidsbridgecenter.org, and then my website for my book and all I've learned from working with kids and people is empathyadvantagebook.com, and people can just check me out and check out Kidsbridge, see what we're doing. Kidsbridge has some free online activities for families to do together. And again, that's kidsbridgecenter.org. So it's called Kidsbridge at Home, empathy activities you can do in your home. So would love for people to visit my work site as well.
Awesome. Well, it's been wonderful talking to you today. I hope to talk to you more about the state of our world and how empathy can help it in the future again. So if you could just give everybody the best ways to find your book and to learn more about Kidsbridge and everything.
So I would say, I like to support independent bookstores, not really an Amazon person. So independent bookstores can order my book, Barnes & Noble, again, empathyadvantagebook.com, or learn about Kidsbridge and what we're doing, inculcating empathy with kids, teachers, parents, and families. So they can check that out. And I'm Lynne Azarchi, which is a really tough thing to spell. So I think we'll just go with what I said before.
Yeah. Azarchi is Azarchi, right?
You got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, also LynneAzarchi.com. I just didn't want to burden anybody with my last name, so.
Yeah. No, again, it's been really cool talking to you, and hopefully we can change the world one empathetic person at a time, right?
I love that. I'll write that down. But thank you for the opportunity and for caring about this issue. It's very important, and the world really needs more empathy now.
Yeah. All right. Bye for now, and thank you everybody for listening. And please do go check out Lynne Azarchi's work. It is wonderful, and it really. I'm just going to say it's going to be earth-shattering, and it'll change our world to a better place. Thanks again, Lynne.
Thank you, Michael. Be well. Thank you.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
And I looked up at a shooting star, and then I wondered who you are. I just need to know. So I wish upon that shooting star, and then I wondered where you are.
This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.